go. Let's just measure your oxygen saturation. Pop a little mask on you.
I simply remember lying back on the bed, and then I was under. You're kind of like in a form of purgatory. The level of being under that I was a thing I believe called RASS-4, which means you're absolutely well out there. But the general accepted opinion is that I wouldn't have experienced anything.
Hiya, you're right. Hi, everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Steve Kalis Show. I'm Steve Kalis and I'm joined, as usual, by Kevin Harris. Kevin, how are we doing?
Enthused by your hello.
Good. Guess what I like? I like to empower people with my energy. And we're also joined by Producer George. Producer George, looking great, looking fly. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Yep, all good on this side of the world.
Are you? Have you moved?
IT international jet setter. Fucking Mr. Worldwide.
Wait, for Christ's sake. Oh, Christ. Oh no. I can't know. Hang on, let me get this fucking giggles
Mr.
up.
Worldwide. It's fucking
Oh, Christ.
Oh, sorry about
that.
That was the look of someone who completely lost what he was going to say.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Thank you, George. Good. So, fellas, a couple of days ago, we interviewed Stuart Brown, and the story we were told is extraordinary, and at parts really, really frightening and then uplifting ultimately, because he managed to turn his life around based on this terrible thing that happened. Since we recorded that episode, what have you taken away from it? Like, George, what was your impression sort of post-episode?
I just think it's a really interesting subject. You know, it's one of those things we never know how close we are to death. We don't know what's going to happen on the other side of things, and it's an age-old question. Sleep is the cousin of death, as being one of those sayings that people say, and I think from Stuart's perspective, he was really close to that, and I don't think you really get that insight from anyone else out there. It's really hard to find someone who's been in that situation.
That's it. It's so rare, isn't it? So rare, and we've got the insight. I mean, you don't get this very often. Here's a guy who's just been through it, and he wants to talk. He's got the PTSD and that, which is awful, but he's also a very rare resource of information that is otherwise very hard to get. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and Stuart's a really interesting guy to speak to. He really paints the picture for us and really lets us into what he experienced. And I don't know if other people would be so willing to share, and that's what I was really impressed by Stuart and the story that he told.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. Yeah, it was lovely. What about you, Kevin? What did you take from that episode?
That what drugs do to the human mind when you're no longer in control is fucking haunting.
So scary. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Haunting. You can understand why he's got his PTSD doesn't come from, a fear of needles or hospital rooms or stuff. It's what he saw when he was under. That's just madness.
Yeah, that period where, I think it's in the 3 days where they're trying to get him out of the coma, where he's essentially being tortured by his own brain and unable to escape from it. It's just, well, the listener will hear, and so we'll crack straight into the episode. What I will say is, if you're listening to this, please do us a favor and click the follow button on Spotify, leave us a review, and click subscribe or follow wherever you're listening to us. It really, really helps. We're trying to be the UK's #1 podcast. We know we've got a long way to go, but we're really trying to build something here. So without further ado, we'll jump straight into the episode. The first question we asked essentially was, why were you in a coma? What happened? And then we just let him roll. So here it is.
Essentially, I got COVID and did the typical bloke thing, really, which has just left it far too long. And in the end, my wife went and overruled my protest that I was going to be all right, and called the doctor, who immediately called an ambulance. And I got the ambulance and went to Yeovil. They said that they were going to put me in a coma. And at that point, I said to the anaesthetist, is this kind of like a life-threatening scenario? And his exact words were, "There's no guarantees at this stage." So, which at the time I was like, "Oh, well, that's a bit of a bummer."
Yeah.
And so I asked him to go and have a bit of paper to do a quick will. And with the amount of possessions I've got and the amount of money I've got, it was 2 sentences. So that's what happened. And I remember when I asked him the question about, is it life-threatening, he gave me a look, which even now, he didn't mean to, by the way, the fellow that did it. He's a nice guy. Absolutely terrified me, because it was a look of, "You're absolutely joking, aren't you? You're really in the cart on this one." So he had this look of horror on his face. And the other thing is, I thought he was Scottish, but he actually turned out to be Egyptian. So which I only found out about 6 months ago. So I'm actually happy that I didn't, succumb to the Scots. And if it would have, it was much better to go out, leave this mortal coil being beaten by an Egyptian than the Scots. But anyway, for anyone that's wondering what this is like, I cannot recall any sound, like on TV programs where they got sounds of beeping and rushing around and all this kind of stuff. I simply remember lying back on the bed.
There we go. Let's just measure your oxygen
I'm just
saturation.
going to pop a little mask on you, or some oxygen.
Right.
Is there enough space at the back of the bed?
And then I was under. It was as simple as that, really. Well, I can tell you about the drugs. I have actually got something in common with Tom Petty and Prince, but my outcome was slightly different. I've had some fentanyl, which is one of the things they give you when you're under, I understand. That's what I understand. If that's wrong, then it was a possibility, but that's what I was told by my wife. I hope she didn't administer the fentanyl, because that'd be quite worrying. But, that would take NHS cuts to an extreme. But yeah, when you're under, my experience was that it was like and you've got to remember, by the way, I was under it was in November 2021, and I was under for 7 days. So all the things that were happening around me for 7 days, what I remember from the coma, it could be that it only happened for a few minutes or a few hours. I simply won't know. But the impression that I got was that it happened over a long period of time, as in days. And I understand that they were trying to get me out of the coma for 3 days, which isn't an uncommon thing, but that was actually one of the more frightening aspects of it, in that because now I know what I was experiencing. And to answer your question, you're kind of like in a form of purgatory, where you're semi-aware on a very basic level of stuff, and you kind of got this like orangey red sort of band like in front of you. And with me, what happened was that there was this beeping sound, which I give with a spoiler alert, I only found this out a couple of months ago, but more than likely, in fact, almost certainly was the ventilator, because the noise matches perfectly. And there was this beeping sound. So it was like a child playing a single note on a xylophone repeatedly. So like beep, 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 and then a low beep. Then I'd hear children talking, which I now believe to be the medical staff perhaps reacting to something. And then the most bonkers aspect of it was this, the rabbits you get at Easter, the silver, the gold foil coloured lynch rabbits you get they've got chocolate inside.
Yeah.
One of those, but green, basically kept coming into my field of vision, so to speak, after the children's noise sound. And then there was like this carousel of like gummy bear type sweets, gummy bears, not boiled, but like boiled sweets, gummy bear size sort of things that were sweeping around this rabbit like a carousel. And the colour of this rabbit in the sweets was identical to the green scrubs that the nurses or the staff had. So the weird thing is, you've got to remember, I couldn't see anything. There was nothing I could see. So where I got that from, I don't know. But what I have learned is that a lot of the stuff that has happened, if not, well, the vast majority, is something that is based in reality somewhere along the line. So as well as that, so that was a repeating situation. As well as that, I was in a red room, and that room just had a bed in it and like what's those things, like bean bags in the corner and a lamp. Everything was like a red, light red, medium red to a dark red, and it was constantly folding in on itself. So you had this kind of like, almost like a lava lamp without the bubbles. So if you can imagine, even though you're out of it, you're still aware, and it's kind of like a form of purgatory. And I have to say, whenever I go past Yeovil Hospital, I look up at the ICU room, which basically the ICU is in the brick building in between, high up, and you can see the car. If you could see, you could see the car park from the window. So that's where it is. So whenever I go past the hospital on the dual carriageway bit, I think, blimey, there's up to possibly 10 people there that are experiencing what I experienced. And the worrying bit about it is what's so many worrying bits about it, but the level of being under that I was a thing I believe called RASS -4, which means you're absolutely well out there. So I shouldn't have experienced, by the way, this isn't a blame on anyone, but the generally accepted opinion is that I wouldn't have experienced anything.
Just to ask then, because you said a very poignant bit there where you said that they tried to bring you back for 3 days.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible that you were RASS, whatever you called it then, for the period up until they started trying to bring you back, and then the 3 days after that, where they started introducing drugs to your system to bring you back around, was what started everything, started waking parts of your brain up, but not the bits you needed, and that's when it went where it just went.
Yeah, I think that's entirely possible. The reason why I say that is that that would fit my guess at the time period, because you really do feel that it's not right. I mean, it's almost like you're some sort of basic creature, like an amoeba or just something with absolutely, well, no, that's got no thing at all, but something with really basic level of understanding. And the other reason is that the anaesthetist that I did manage to speak to, the guy that put me under, he said that there was some kind of monitoring that said that there was definitely nothing much happening in my brain. So it makes sense what you're saying, yeah. Essentially, coming round was one of the more terrifying bits, because before I came round, and this is we discussed this with my wife earlier today, before I came round, and whilst I was coming around, I envisaged myself with this red room up until I'm pointing to my right, but up to my left, and I was on a staircase below this room, and the staircase was made of 2 parts with a landing in between, and I was sat on the landing with a sword down my throat and basically begging the people. I could hear them sort of talking to me, or felt I could hear them talking to me, saying, "Do you want to come back? Do you want to come back to the real world?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do. Please." It was almost like they were just toying with me, which I know they weren't, by the way, but that's what it felt like. And so I was observing myself, I was looking at myself on this stairway with the room, with like an open front to the room that I envisaged in the coma. Up and to my left, and you've got to remember as well. I didn't know that I was having a thing down my throat. I didn't know that I was coming out. I didn't even know I was in a coma at that stage. I hadn't pieced it all together. So it was a very, very strange experience. Yeah.
So was that like? Is that just your? Was it like your consciousness was too slowly crawling back to the forefront? I mean, were you just emerging from the coma too slowly, or why was that such an uncomfortable thing? Do you know? Or why did it take so long to pull you out of it? Were you just in such a deep state of wherever, or like what was the issue of pulling you back out?
I just think I don't think there was any. Well, there obviously was issues, but I don't think it was. And I don't have to explain it. I don't think it's an issue as such. I just think it's the way it happens.
Oh, so sometimes people just.
Sometimes people take a little while before they want to come out. Knowing me, I probably just wanted a few extra days in bed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they take like a little while to come out.
So, Stuart, you talked about having the sword down your throat a bit more vividly when we spoke on the phone. And we are assuming, and you assumed, I think you assumed at the time that was the respirator that was down your throat. So,
yeah.
Do you remember that as like a sort of physical feeling, or was it a sort of I don't know the way to describe it. Was it a physical feeling? Because you said you were sort of looking in on these experiences while you were down.
I think the brain feels in a lot more than what we actually think, and even though I didn't know, I don't think I have to explain it. Even though I didn't know, my body knew that there was something in it, and it was filling in the blanks, so to speak. But sort of jumping ahead, but also coming back here. I've had a lot of therapy because I've suffered from PTSD, which we'll come to in a minute, after the coma. And one of the therapies is EMDR, where you go and relive the experience and work it through to try and put it into another part of your brain so it's not quite as much, not so troublesome. And essentially, and also I did literally last week, I was part of an academic study about near-death experiences. So I had to explain, well, not had to, willingly explain to this lady what happened. And essentially, I had a near-death experience, which about 10% of people do. And out of those 10%, about 10% have ones that are most of them are nice. Unfortunately for me, my one wasn't. And with the taking the near-death experience aspect of it, it's really common for people to observe themselves outside their bodies, and then they either pull away from the body, which is called disassociative, or they come towards the body, which was what my one was. So I was looking at myself from like a distance, and then I was like right in front of my body on the stairs, looking at my situation. Essentially, that's called associative. So that's called out-of-body experience associative. And by the way, for the benefit of the people listening to this, prior to all of this, I had I'm a bit of a pragmatist and like led by the evidence and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm not so sure about what happens after we die, because so many weird things happened. Also the situation where, I just think there perhaps might be something a bit more going on, but we will never know. But with the EMDR, I'll tell you what happened there. It was absolutely incredible, and I put a post up on Facebook about it. I think Steve can use the image if he wants on this. Is that it took me back to the being in the coma and coming out aspect. And essentially, when I went into the coma, so remember, this is in the therapy, this is afterwards, but he's trying to drag out memories from the time. I was like in this pool at night, like an infinity pool. So, like if you ever swam at night, the water feels thicker. And so I'm like at head level to the water. And there were these people like in shadow beckoning me over to the edge of this infinity pool. And when I got there, they started trying to pull me out. And like too late, I realised that they weren't pulling me out to help me. They were pulling me out to take me away. So it was like, that's a bit frightening. And anyway, and again, this last bit I'll go on about this particular aspect because it relates to after the coma. But apparently it's really common for this situation to occur. So going through the water, you've got this sort of element of traveling from one place to another. And the other aspect is that you're sort of given the opportunity to come back if you want to. So again, for anyone listening to this, if you're thinking that sounds an absolute load of nonsense, believe me, if it hadn't happened to me, I'd be agreeing with you. When I was coming out, you're obviously on these drugs, so I actually thought I wasn't in a hospital. I thought I was in a facility, and it kind of like bends the reality of what's around you. So, for example, I thought that it was all open air, that they had these like weird plastic animal masks on, that they were doing Tai Chi in front of me, all kinds of weird stuff. And that's what happened when I was, just got out. And then you think, oh, brilliant, I've survived. And then this is when I keep saying the most terrifying, but then I keep remembering something else that was terrifying. I'd woken up for like a couple of hours, if that, and the nurse left the room to do some paperwork or something. And I heard the sounds and I thought it was coming from the night, not light, the emergency light. And I heard the sound that I'd heard in my coma. So I thought, oh my God, I've been pranked. I am in actual fact dead. And this is just, like Final Destination 86, where the guy's like, yes, I survived the end of the movie. Then a car lands on his head. Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, brilliant. I am actually dead. And what am I going to do about this? Which is a bit of a weird thought process. So I came to the conclusion that either I was dead and somehow I had to escape that situation. So I don't know how that would work. I'd probably have to get Tom Cruise on the job.
Yeah, I bet he knows people who knows people who can pull you out of there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I know a man. Yeah. Basically, the other one was that if the nurse could hear the sound, then I was probably okay. So anyway, she came in and she could hear the sound. But for a few minutes, it was like, oh my God, Stu, this could only happen to you. You're having what's it taken out of you in the afterlife. So there you go. But then if you think you're out of it, again, to use like a Final Destination 86 scenario, then comes along the night and you're having to sleep again. So first thing is you're terrified of sleeping because, well, I was anyway, because you're worried that if you close your eyes, you're never going to wake up again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then you do drift off and you have the most horrific, and this is really common, by the way, apparently, as you probably guess, I'm a bit of a numbers person, but about 80% of people experience this. Essentially, you get the most horrific dreams. So like with me, it was, and some of them sound daft, but if they're actually happening to you, they're not all that daft. So like a steam train came through the front of the ICU unit, and as it's rushing towards me, this rodent appears with his mouth open with bloody teeth and literally swallowed me.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I'm not a train enthusiast, by the way. And apparently well, I spoke to a mate of mine who's in a coma, and a lady friend who's in a coma, and they had trains as well. So there's I told you when I was met Steve for a drink, I said this to him, there's something either within ICU units or a sound that triggers people to think about trains. Or could just be the travelling aspect of it. I don't know. But it's weird that 3 people who are not train enthusiasts thought of trains. The other thing was people kicking me when I'm on the floor, fighting with weird machines, like Nazis repeatedly shooting people, just really horrific stuff. And the next day, I asked in fact, not next day, a couple of days later, I asked one of the doctors why don't you dream of fluffy bunny rabbits or lying on a beach or whatever? And this relates to what you said, one of you said about the fight for life. And essentially being a fluffy bunny rabbit and lying on a beach doesn't cut it in a fight for life. You'll be slaughtered.
You said that you were brought back round. They tried to bring you back round for 3 days, and then obviously you came back round. There's then like a timeline where you said it's not waking up and, oh, Mum, wife. There's a lot more to it than that. What was the timeline between you sort of being aware and then being able to converse, move, think, hand move, do, that sort of an almost normal level of functioning, if you will?
Well, the moving is a few days. Well, I'll come to that in a second. But to answer it, it's a few days. That is a very good question you've asked there, and no one's asked me that. And
that's why he's here. That's why he's here.
yeah, out of all the conversations I've had this, boring people to death, and no one's asked me that. But what I would guess, probably, and this is a guess, by the way. The other stuff I'm very clear about. This one, I'm actually not. I would probably say a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, something like that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't like to go and put a number on it because I simply don't know. But I imagine it would be 2 or 3 hours. Is what it felt like.
Did you come back with all your faculties, or was there anything you had to work on after the fact?
Did anything get left behind?
Now, that is a good one because from the moment I was aware, which actually was about midday, so it was about an hour and a half, because I came out, in my notes, it said I was out at 10:30 in the morning, and at midday, my wife was there, so essentially it was, about an hour and a half. My whole life, there's life before my waking up from the coma, and there's life after. And essentially, from the moment that I remember it was distinctly because it was when my wife turned up, and I promised her, I used to love drinking, and I'd never grown up in that respect, and I was really unfit, and I said to her that I was going to go and stop drinking, which I have. I haven't had a drink for about 18, 20 months now. By the way, I wouldn't recommend doing that. Drinking's fantastic.
No.
I would. By the way, this is something you won't get on the NHS. Drink yourself to death until you're calm, because life can be rubbish, and having a good Stella is something that I still wish I could embark on. So so basically I did that, and also I decided that I was going to go and lose weight because it was very clear to me even then that the untold story of COVID, which is on the front page of virtually every newspaper, was people who were unfit got COVID worse than people that were fit. So I was distinctly unfit. I was 22 stone, if not moving on to 23. So in the last 18 months, I've lost 100 pounds in weight. So, and it's nothing, if it helps any of your listeners, I didn't go down the gym. I didn't start to wear Lycra. I didn't do weird supplements, drugs, anything. It literally was a food diet, or is rather, because it'll be an ongoing process for the rest of my life. It was literally just walking and keeping a food diary, and running, in essence, just running a calorie deficit. I remember handing my mobile to my wife and said, take that mobile, there's no time for mucking around on Facebook, surfing the web. For the next few days, I didn't know how long it would be. My concentration has got to be on getting out of this hospital. So what I did was I asked the nurse, I can't remember, the physio, how long is the minimum amount of time it will take for me to get out of this place? And she said, 4 days. I said, what have I got to do? And she said, you've got to have an oxygen level that is, I can't remember the level, but it was I think it was 98 or 99%, but don't quote me on that. And you've got to be able to walk around your room. So to put that into some kind of context, I couldn't even lift. I didn't even have the strength to lift a mobile phone. When you're in a coma, you lose, again, please check this out, but you lose like 2 kilos a day. It's something absolutely insane. And most of that is because everything's been done for you, literally everything. So your body wastes away really quickly. So even after 7 days, you can't walk, and I couldn't even lift my arms or legs. So what I decided to do, and this is my top tip for anyone who's got someone who's just come out of a coma, is don't think, brilliant, I've survived. This is like a travel lodge with room service. You've got to think, I'm going to get, hospitals are where the sick people are. You want to be out there on the absolute hurry up. So what I did was literally started trying to move my arms. And at first it was like 10 degrees for a couple of seconds. then stop. Then after about 2 or 3 hours, I could predict it by 30 degrees for 20 seconds. So it all comes back reasonably quickly. And basically, as opposed to just watching the TV, I went and exercised my way out of it. And believe me, for a porky mid-50s guy, this was an alien experience. But anyway, that's what I decided to do, and I did. And then I got, within a day, I was moved to acute care. And that's when it became apparent I couldn't walk. So again, I just forced myself to walk. It's just so painful. I can't, having a Zimmer frame and whatever was just awful. In the end, I went and got out of there. I think I could have done it in 3 days, but they didn't have the physios to come and see me. I was ready in 3 days, but I left after 4. And I vowed that I would be back a year later fit. And I left at 2 o'clock in the morning. And 2 o'clock in the morning a year later, I was there. But I know you guys want to talk about the coma, but the actual the actual after aspects of it with the PTSD.
Well, we'd love to ask you about that now. Actually, that is something.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, essentially, I got out and I did what a lot of people do, which is, by the way, before we move on actually from the coma, another thing I'd like to say to anyone that got someone actually in a coma at the moment, or if it happens in the future, hold their hand, talk to them. Because they might, even though they look like they're out of it and they don't know anything, or even if it's near end of life, where it's quite a common knowledge that it's hearing that goes the last, people know more than what you think. And my wife said to me, one example, when she was holding my hand in the coma, she put my wedding ring and her wedding ring on, and she touched my hand with that. And apparently I started to cry in the coma. I've got no memory of that. But I must, on some level, I must have known it because it actually happened. So, we need all the encouragement we can get. So anyway, I've left the hospital, right? I think everything's fine. So I'm trying to get back to normal via fitness. And so the first thing that happened was I woke up the next morning. It's 2 o'clock I left. 2 o'clock in the morning, woke up at 9, and I tell you something, it was the most beautiful experience, one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. There was like sun shining through the window. I was in the wife, because I was so skanky from being in a bed in COVID for about a week before 10 days before I went to the hospital. The room was like, lovely white sheets and da-da-da. And I thought, right, I can either lie in this bed and it's all going to go wrong, or I'm going to get up and I'm going to get walking and I'm going to get fit and I'm going to make this my new life. And I charged up the Apple phone, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, I started walking. And I don't even know, I'm quite good at describing things, I think, but this was just so incredibly difficult, but it's so important because I'd lost 2 stone already. In the week or so, week 10 days I was in hospital. What a lot of people do, everyone loses weight. Well, most people lose weight, but what most people do is lie in bed thinking they've escaped this situation and convert it into a long-term situation where the muscle that they've lost, the weight they've lost, a lot of which is muscle, they then replace with pure fat. So they get back to where they were, but worse. So you've got to honestly, if you can, obviously take medical advice, but there's no but, take medical advice. If you can, get walking. I walked, on the first day I did 500 steps, and then within a week I was doing 10,000, and within 3 weeks I was doing 20. And this was round 3/4 of a double bed. So you can't tell me you need a gym, you need this, you need that, you need the clothes, you need the trainers. You just need the motivation to get going, and it's so important. So basically we can then skip forward 6 months, and I thought everything was going really well, and I was a poster boy for everything that was for coma recoveries, and I'd already learned. And this is one of the things that I'd like to come out of this podcast on a personal level. is that for 18 months now, I've been trying to find somebody who's had an experience like myself, as in got physically better really well, and mentally the PTSDs are what's his name, but overall has, you know, done well. And I can't find anybody. It's absolutely mad. I mean, the hospital says these people exist, but I haven't found anyone, and that freaks me out, because one of the aspects, well, and we can skip ahead now to the PTSD. So in the summer, literally almost overnight, I mean, literally within a space of a couple of days, something that I didn't even know, because I thought PTSD was something soldiers got. I didn't even consider it within my scenario. And it's just so overwhelming. You can't do anything. The dreams are just incredible. I mean, if you thought the dreams in the hospital were bad, I'll give you two examples, which I personally find really upsetting. One is I kept envisaging myself in the hospital bed with the sheets fluttering up around me, becoming hard, and then with the sheet making a lid of a coffin, and it all going dark. So I'm in a coffin and it's dark. Then the lid comes off, and there's this great big crab on my chest with pincers around my with a pincer around my neck, and it's like, yeah. And then my body levitating off the bed, becoming a skeleton, becoming a tree, and then this is like the full Beatles experience of Jimi Hendrix. If you can remember who they are. My eyes becoming apples that then rotted and landed back on me.
Oh, mate.
And it's just so horrific. And ironic, bizarrely enough, they were all linked to songs. And I won't play them, but I'll just go and list them to you here. Stay by Shakespeare's Sister, and then there was Zombie, Aisha, Death in Vegas. And the one that was came to be the worst one related back to the anaesthetist that put me under, saying that I might not be coming back. And that was, there's a song which we might be able to remember. You're probably a bit too young, Steve, but Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and it's Two Tribes. And part of that song, he goes, "Mine is the last voice you'll ever hear. Don't be alarmed." Well, looking back, I was quite alarmed, actually, although I didn't realise.
No, that's an alarm.
Yeah, it was. Things at the time, it wasn't alarming, but looking back, it's absolutely terrifying. So, but fair play to the guy, you know. He had the balls to write up in my medical notes, not exactly what I said, but paraphrasing what I just told you. And I was really pleased about that, because my family, if I had died, remember there was a 38 to 50% chance I would have died. My family would have knew that I knew. Yeah, he didn't sugarcoat my notes. He was really honest. And I thought that was fantastic. So
just to ask, you did say something there, and you've touched on it a couple of times. With I know a few people who've been told they've got X amount of years to live, and they've been suggested that they go talk to people with the same afflictions, because obviously you share the same. I have never, until today, with yourself, spoken to anyone who's been in a coma, or no, you know, not. Oh, my brother was there, but nothing, no one.
yeah, I found that.
Where do you find them all to speak to?
Well, this is the trouble, you see, because if you go on Facebook or online, you'll find groups that help people that have been in comas or suffering from delirium or whatever. But the problem is, it's a self-selecting group of people that are unhappy with their situation. So it's very, you'd think you'd be able to find somebody that was pretty good and wanted to talk about it. And I haven't been able to. And this is one of the things that freaks me out, because part of my job, oh, by the way, going back to the death thing, I'm not afraid, before I forget, I'm not afraid of death anymore. I don't court death because I want to live a long time. But death, actually, although some of what I experienced was terrifying, a lot of it was really peaceful and beautiful and surreal. And I think that if you're, it's not something that frightens me anymore, because I don't think it's anything to be scared of. It's part of our natural, it's got to happen to everybody. it happens to everybody, and it's not the worst experience. I mean, you could pull a 5-pinter. That would have been a bad experience, but you know, not that I know what that is now because I'm 55 and I don't drink.
No more 10 to 2 princesses for you.
That's exactly right. So basically there's that. And the other thing is my work involves VR and also and now, although because this has only happened really in the last 8 months or so, AI. And part of the problem that I had with the PTSD was that, and I still think it at odd moments now, is that I truly believe that I never left the ICU unit, or I might in actual fact be dead.
This is the when we started the episode. By the way, George, how's this sounding? Is this sounding okay?
Yeah.
So Stuart, this is the part at the beginning of the episode I told you that initially it didn't hit me, but when I started to think about you and this story when I got home, I've genuinely been unable to sort of shake this off. There's 2 things you said, like, you know, for all you know, you could wake back up in the hospital bed and this could all have been a fever dream. And the other thing was your hands have been cold, which makes you feel like a sort of dead man walking. Is that
Yeah, that's it. Basically, my hands are always cold. It's almost like I'm struggling to think of the correct analogy here, but it's because there's some warning. It's almost like it's a warning to other people, the stews, that I'm a wrong 'un, that I shouldn't be here.
Wow.
It's very strange. And apparently, though, with one of the people at the hospital said that a change in sort of core temp. And by the way, I'm not a medical person. If this is rubbish, and someone from the hospital rings up or if someone contacts you who knows more about this than me and corrects it, I'd love to hear it in the notes or the comments, whatever. But I was told that your sort of temperature clock can change, if that's the correct phrase, of looking at it. But yeah, it really, again, that really worries me because it makes me feel as though it's kind of like a warning. Like even in the 16th century, it'd be like, that's why you're a witch, you're going to be burned to the stake or something like that. But yeah, it really freaks me out. And with the again, another movie recommendation actually in this particular regard. I can't remember his name, but the guy that was the star of the Shawshank Redemption. Yeah, that's it. He did a film called Jacob's Ladder. So there's 2 or 3 versions of it, but as in it was been done subsequently. But that was what happens to him in that movie is pretty much how I feel about things, where he's living a life thinking everything's okay, but in actual fact he had died, and in the end, so the spoiler alert, in the end he does he does sort of go up the stairs to die. But yeah, it really freaks me out. And with everything that happened, when I started to explain this to my therapist, like 10 months ago, the AI thing with ChatGPT and Midjourney and all this kind of stuff hadn't really become a thing. So I was trying to say to her that, you know, I didn't believe this. And she was like, well, you know, you're here. You know you're here. I said, well, no, I don't actually. I know that I'm experiencing a reality. And I said, what I said to her was the way I've coped with it now. And that is my reality. It's pretty good. So who really cares? It doesn't matter, you know, trying to analyze whether the reality is here or not. But there was another aspect to it, I'll come back to that in a second, but there's another aspect to it as well. And that is in ICU. Sometimes you're not allowed to go back to, in fact, I went back to the unit just once, but they don't want any photographs and that taken. And part of me thought, and this sounds bonkers, I know, but basically part of me thought, perhaps I'm not allowed to take photographs myself because there's some sort of unwritten algorithmic rule that you can't take, you know, they'll screw it all up the system if you take pictures, you know, if you're still there. Then I know it sounds mad. I've got a job that's great. You know, up until the PTSD, believe it or not, I was flying a helicopter because I passed my helicopter test 20 years ago. You know, everything's sort of so good, and it just doesn't seem real. I feel as though there should be something really, you know, just some anomaly that makes you realise it's a bit too matrixy. Is for another way.
You're in the anomaly right now, Stuart. This is it. Talking to us. This is your anomaly. This is as low as it gets.
Yeah. You're right.
This is your purgatory.
Yeah. So basically, that was that. And then there's not that But do you want to ask me any questions before I rattle on? Do you want to ask any questions?
Yeah, whilst we're in this area, George, have you got anything specifically post-coma written down on our notes?
No, Stuart, you've covered everything. I think I don't know. When we spoke on the phone, I said that I had a family member who wasn't very well, and she was told that she had a really good can-do attitude, and we spoke about it on the phone, and that made a huge difference to her recovery.
Oh, yeah.
She felt like it, and I think you very much had a similar experience. You know, a lot of people just sort of give up. You know, they let it come and get them. They give up and they don't stand back up. And it was really really inspiring for you to say, you know, you didn't do that. You kept walking. You kept trying to get up. You kept trying to do that exercise, because I mean, a lot of people must just sort of give in to it. You know, give in to death, I guess. You know, but to be really blunt about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wanted to add that just because I found that incredible to hear. You know.
Thank you very much. And I'll tell you what, you're so right. And to express that another way, basically, when I was in hospital, my blood sugar was bonkers, and they said that I had diabetes. So I looked that up and thought that was a really bad thing. So, so obviously, being a porky middle-aged bloke who drank beforehand, that's another reason why I changed. Anyway, literally within 3 months, I've changed, and ever since then, all my blood sugars have been absolutely normal. And what I would say to people, especially like people of my age, whether you're male or female or whatever, is it's never too late. And like, you know, I've gone from you know, being something that was a bit of a joke, frankly, you know, from the point of view of the way I looked and stuff, to being now I can like walk down the street and have my head held high. It's like it's incredible. But the main thing that's missing here, I think, from a fitness point of view, is that you don't suffer a quick death, you suffer a very slow death of not being able to do stuff, and yeah, it's just not good. And I'll tell you what, another good thing that really came out of this, and it's how Steve got in contact with me, or someone recommended me to Steve, was that I put a thing on Facebook. Oh, it was you, was it, Kev? Oh, thank you. I'll tell you what, Kev, you're just about to hear what some really good stuff that you've done, all right?
Okay.
Essentially, a guy got in contact with me via that Facebook thing, and me and him go walking most Fridays, and his fitness isn't as good as mine, but he's so determined, and no one else came forward. But if anyone else who's out there has had a coma, wants to meet up on a Friday night, it's typically around 6 to, let us know beforehand because we bury it, me and Phil. Basically, if you want to meet up at the cafe at Yeovil Hospital between 6 and 7 for half an hour, then we go into that park, whose name I keep getting wrong. 9 Springs, 7 Springs, 28 Springs, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, sat-nav gets me there, which shows how rubbish I am. So basically, then we go for a walk for about half an hour. And he wants to go up Snowdon, and he's going to do it. I know he will. And through, you know, I'm hoping, so this is where you come in, Kev, I'm hoping through what you've initiated here with Steve, even if it just helps one person think, you know what, I've just come out of hospital and I'm going to get up and I'm going to do something. Or somebody whose person might even be in Yeovil Hospital now in a coma, they say, you know what, I'm going to spend the extra hour just talking to them, even though I think it's a load of rubbish, because all this is free and it's to the good.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing by things like cliches stick sometimes, and things like mind over matter sometimes. I think that is a powerful thing, and I think if you've got some, what I always say to people, this, especially in like my area, is people with depression or anxiety, and what I say, and the way I've sort of got better myself was by getting angry. You know what I mean? I'm fucking sick of losing. I'm fucking sick of being beaten by this thing. And then you go, not tomorrow. And then you win the little battles that mean you win the large war. And you're a living, breathing, as far as we know, example of that.
This is true. And you know something, Steve? I read a lot of your stuff, and it was just so inspiring. Like, you know, I will say it because, you know, the homelessness and the addiction problems and stuff like that, and you're wandering around Europe and all this kind of, absolutely amazing. And I it's never too late. I mean, look at me, getting on, for the age where I'm going to, start going to see bowls, wearing grey socks, finding 80-year-olds looking young. It's like it's never too late to try and turn your life around. And I tell you what, I've had more fun, even though it's been difficult with the PT. I keep going about the PTSD because it's just an overall. It's like, do you remember? God, most of your listeners won't even know who this is, but there used to be a cartoon called the Anthill Mob, and one of the people in it used to have this rain cloud above his head. It just followed him around everywhere. And you can be like that, or you can go and try and, we're only here once, as far as we know. Try and be as positive as you can,
I'm currently attempting to remove the cloud as we speak.
Oh, well, there you go. Fantastic. I'm trying to think of some stuff. Must move. Oh, that was it. Again, like a little bit of help. Basically, because of the war in Ukraine and interest rates and all that sort of stuff, COVID and people with pneumonia and all that kind of stuff has gone off the front page. With me, and it happens to a lot of people, especially blokes, because we're rubbish, is we leave it too long. So if somebody does have suspected COVID or a lung problem, they haven't left their bed, buy or borrow an oxygen meter. Yeah, they're literally 10 to 20 quid. It's like a crocodile clip on your finger, and it'll give you a reading of your oxygen. And again, check the medical people, but if it's below 95%, get a bit worried. If it's below 90%, then call a doctor or whatever. But don't take my word for that. Just get one, and it will have it in the instructions. And the other thing I'd say is, if you can't run to doing that, or you can't just try and go up 2 or 3 steps. If you can't do it, you're in SHIT street, and get yourself to a flipping doctor. Don't do what I did and be an idiot and leave it for a long time. Going back to the coma thing, in a funny kind of way, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because before the coma, I was all for possessions and status and money, and like now, none of that matters. What matters is my family, my dog, being a better person. I've got a halo above my head, but my whole life now is a different life, and it's a better life.
You can give us your money if you like.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Mate, you know what the good thing is? I can post it to you, and for normal postage, £5, and you're like that. And you know what? They won't even buy you a parking ticket for flipping an hour for your stuff. But anyway, you can have what's mine's yours.
You've done well, Stuart, to crawl back from this and then to run back from this and then to become strong again. I think that's really impressive. And I would implore listeners to reach out to Stuart if you have some experience in this and you want to talk to someone. He's the guy. He's been there. And Kevin, George, do you have anything sort of further to add or anything you're curious about? And we've got it's a rare situation we got.
I think we've covered everything.
Stuart, you're very, very good.
Yes, thorough, detailed.
Yeah,
I like it.
Like with something, because it's difficult sometimes if people aren't good communicators and we're trying to drag answers out of them. But you're a natural, so you've done an excellent job. So thank you.
Brilliant.
For the show,
Before we go, one last thing. I'll throw in last so you can edit it out. The website's Interview with the Coma. So there'll be a link below. I'll do the old YouTube thing. I've wanted to do that for years. So there'll be a link below or something like that. So
George has got a
the
job now.
website's rubbish at the moment, but it will be getting better. So there you go. Hey, look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. It's really appreciated.
Oh, hey, it's
No problem. It's good to speak to you.
Yeah, very good. And so thank you to producer George for joining us and for doing such questions and doing producery things. Great work, George.
And Kev, thank you, and your tasting cars. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, and Kevin, thanks for co-hosting as well. Good questions. We've done a good job today, boys. So thank you, Stuart, and we'll see you soon.
See you, Stuart.
See ya.
Hiya, you're right. Hi, everyone.